halfway through with their resolutions, which is good. Do you guys have any questions before we start? Any questions about position papers? Nope. Okay. Eileen, do you have anything to say before we start?
I just want to thank everyone who came today and who also finished their position paper on time. I got everyone's on time, surprisingly. So thank you, and then we'll grade you and get you back with your points as soon as possible.
Okay. Okay, let's begin. Could you guys all change your names to whichever secretary you are? I will do that as well. Okay. Should have to get a vote. I don't. We will start with roll call today. All delegates are reminded that everyone change their names. All delegates are reminded that if the delegate responds with present and voting, they may not abstain from any substantive voting procedures. And today we will have a lot of substantive voting procedures to go through, so please be mindful of that. Okay, let's start. Secretary of Education.
Present and voting.
Secretary of Commerce.
Present and voting.
Secretary of Homeland Security.
Present and voting.
Ambassador to the UN.
Present.
Secretary of Labor.
Present.
Secretary of Transportation.
Present.
Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Present.
Secretary of Energy.
Present.
Secretary, the Vice President.
Present.
Secretary of State.
Present and voting.
Secretary of Housing and Urban Development.
Present.
Okay, with I believe 11 delegates present, simple majority will be set at 6 and super majority will be set at 8. Are there any points or motions on the floor? The chair would look favorably upon any unmoderated or unmoderated caucus regarding the last session we had. The Secretary of State, you're recognized.
This delegate would like to motion for unmoderated caucus for around 10 minutes for the purpose of wrapping up the unfinished resolutions. We'll talk about who will be submitting the resolution.
That is in order. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Seeing none, the committee will go into voting procedure for Secretary of State's motion for an unmoderated caucus of 10 minutes, finishing up the resolutions. The vote is going to be in about now. Ignore the testing. Okay. I am. Okay, so with whoops, okay. Okay, with 9 delegates, with the unanimous vote, this motion passes. I will put you guys into your country blocks, but you guys will have to give me about 3 minutes to do that. Eileen, are you the co-host right now?
I think so.
Okay, you might need to change that. Let me put you guys into rooms first. You guys might actually have to call it out for me, but Secretary of Homeland Security, Ambassador to the UN, and the Secretary of Energy. You guys are a country block, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then let's do Secretary of Health and Human Services, Treasury, Commerce. You guys are a group, and Housing and Urban Development. Are you in that as well?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, she is. She's in our country block.
Okay, thank you. And the Secretary of State and the Vice President, correct? And lastly, Education, Transportation, and Labor. Are you guys all in the country block?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there you guys. Some people are not here. Just if they come, I'll put you guys in that group. Mr. Witt.
Yep.
Oh, you're okay.
I'm here.
I'll just put you into a breakout room and you can move around in there, I think.
Sounds good.
Put you in this one. Yeah.
Protest and COVID-19. Yeah. Do you guys want me to summarize the paragraphs for you?
Oh.
And then we can add on to it? Or did you already read it?
I'm reading right now.
Okay, yeah.
I'm searching up like how do you open up this? It's
Word is making sure or ensuring.
viral test.
For all safety. Wait, not safety. Well, what do you call something like you have to meet like the clean, like how clean something is?
Yeah, the safety standards maybe.
Safety.
Or
Okay.
yeah, we can fix it later. They'll know what. I hope like
Standards.
they'll be okay with it.
Ensuring that all safety standards
Viral test.
are followed on the.
How do you do this?
Okay. What else?
Testing officer. Well, they need to set up an appointment. Okay.
Appointment.
No, I'm just like reading like how does test site work? I don't even know how test sites work. We don't really have a test site here in Saipan, right? It's just that like you go there and get tested. But in states, I think you can't just walk in there. It has to be like
Ours is a drive-through.
ours is drive-through. Really? I don't
think
know.
so.
Okay.
And they stay in their car.
This is good. So this is allocating more funds toward
Is our solution standing for, and why is it standing for that? Like, So like, you know how I learned many about international relations. So like, we can just basically say something along the lines of, by helping each other, by helping other countries and each other, we both gain benefits through like helping them by getting rid of the COVID-19 on their nation, which helps the world as a whole. And also, in contrast, our country gains these supplies. Yes.
Okay, wait. I'm gonna bring a pencil and I'll be back. Wait. Okay.
Yeah, but we should like this is
Yeah.
just rough draft. So if there's anything you guys want to add on to this.
Okay.
Sail, do you have any ideas?
I don't think so.
No? I mean, what do you think we can do? Like,
Wait, for 2 or 3 preambulatory clauses?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
4 looks good.
Find it with that slide.
You guys have any questions?
I think we're okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Preambular.
Looking for the PowerPoint. Okay, guys, how we think of more preambulatory clauses?
So we need another or a few more. Okay, wait.
Like 2 more.
We do you guys think put transportation as one of the preambulatory? It's a good like
Yeah, I think that's an important thing
yeah.
to talk
Yeah,
about.
we can do transportation.
Like they have buses in the States, right? Can we say like make a extra bus route or something that heads directly to each test site? So
Yeah,
people can
yeah.
just get on the bus.
Mm.
Or do they
So what
use
do you-
bus or trains? Or we
They use
live in a
both, I think. But like,
small place.
I think
We don't
buses
know.
are better because trains is more like for a public use. I think bus, if like it can be like certain buses for
Like
only
special
for
buses.
test. Yeah. Because other buses are for other people, you know. Okay, wait. How about what word do you want to use? We can use
Wait, let me find.
acknowledging, emphasizing, having considered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
having considered
Okay. Wait, let me get it's like
oh,
this, right?
bus
Having
transportation. Wait, I
Is this
think you
how
have to put number 2. Oh wait, no, you don't have to.
No,
Never
that's
mind.
operative.
Yeah, I think so. Wait, I have a
Okay.
question for these. What should it comma or
Oh yeah,
semicolons?
shoot. Let me check. You put that's for operative clause, right? Yeah, you put a comma. The last one is semicolon.
Like here. Yes. Semicolon. And the last one you need to end with a period. I think that's what it says.
Wait, is this okay? Enforcing the CARES Act to provide frontline workers with their necessities?
I think it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, do I end this one with a period? The last one?
No, it's a semicolon because we're gonna have another.
We're gonna have more.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, having considered providing special transportation
For having considered
for
that the
what?
United States needs oh shoot, why is that? Having considered that the United States need a safe way
for
basically
their
like
citizens to get tested.
yeah. Can we do it like this? Like it's just gonna be do we have to always have an operative clause for everything, or we can
Yeah, I think so.
was in
I
their
think we do.
example it was just like preambulatory.
Oh yeah, I think we can do that. Like without having a operative clause. Right? I think that's
This is so hard. But
but
anyways,
preambulatory is just the main purpose though.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, maybe we could do
So-
like write the problem and then
agencies. So now the Attorney General is like with executive order, the Attorney General can certify and allocate and basically give funds to each department, right? But currently it's only the Attorney General that has that power. So do you think for our operative clauses we can add another person or department to handle that? Okay. So who do you think can help with that? Because they have the Department of Health and Services, something like that. Yeah, they're also supposed to work with the Attorney General to ensure training for police officers for mental health, right? But that's the only other department that's involved with this. So, what department do you guys think could we include?
Okay, so work on your preambulatory clause for now. I'll try to get the time right, but yeah, you guys can work on that. I'm gonna let you guys talk.
Oh my gosh, this is so complicated. Okay. UN/R/. It's just how to write a resolution.
a resolution.
How to, okay, what does a resolution? What does what does a UN what does a resolution? What does a UN resolution look like? I need the code. Okay. Okay. A resolution. But that's General Assembly. This is what UN resolution is UN. By who? By which council? General Assembly. Okay. That means it's RS. A slash. This is complicated. 65-95. 65-95. All by General Assembly. Okay. UN resolution. A resolution. A slash RS slash 65 slash 235 235 16. A slash res slash 65-1. This one is about global health and foreign policy. The second one is scope, mentalities, format, and organization of high-level meeting of General Assembly on the provision and the control.
Sub operator.
This operative clause has to have what?
No, does the operator clause have to have the sub operator like?
It would be nice. Like, you know, like if you see in the Zygmunt resolution, the first one doesn't, but then it's because it's really long. Usually, you should have sub clauses, sub clauses, sub clauses. Because it should be really, really detailed and it should be realistic. Okay.
Other. Yeah, that's all I got. Should I add anything or leave it?
Like add one more sentence.
Okay.
Don't say thank you all. Good night.
Wait.
Back. Ollie.
Yeah.
I'll just copy and paste it
Try.
and then tab it.
Note that I
Right there.
realizes. Do you guys think like recommend? No.
We can say, how about expressing concern that the people working.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, the 3 is gone. Oh my gosh. I'm good.
Go back.
Concern, expressing concern.
3 there.
At frontline workers.
Okay, wait. Let me get rid of these. There's so much.
That frontline workers
Okay.
in testing lines and transportation.
And the special transportation system and the
system. Transportation system.
No, why doesn't the 3 work? It's so annoying.
Wait,
okay, I'm gonna space y'all out like do.
Needs.
Wait, Holly, I got it.
Need more.
I know, but don't include this in the number 2 because this is number 3.
Yeah,
Okay.
can you space it out even further so I don't touch it?
More.
Okay. Expressing concern that need
more support on supplies and safety.
No, not supplies. Supplies will be the first one. How about support with economic needs more support with finances?
Needs more financial support.
Yeah, needs more financial support. And
okay, there finally I got the 3.
Yeah, bro.
Nice.
And health something, right?
I got the 3.
And
okay, Tina.
Needs more financial support and safety
Don't erase the 3,
management. Management.
Tina, can you think of a thing for an operative class while me and Lindsay do the ambulatory? This is for the frontline workers, okay?
In the testing sites and the transportation needs more financial support and safety management.
Wait, where's the 3? Why is this so spaced out? Let me go back.
And safety management.
Okay, that's close enough.
Financial.
Wait, is this the? Oh no, that's not the. Okay, then we need a clause.
Let's say, or with a government that allows less strict social distancing rules should are allowed to follow through with their traditional face-to-face education courses. That would, and then after this, you would write Seo-young, you would now write like all the stuff that you would require them to do. So give me one idea.
Free free supplies, like giving needed to attend schools are given out.
Oh, so like masks, hand sanitizers. Okay. Require schools.
Need direct contact with the workers? Wait,
What
this
do you
is
mean, like?
operative, okay? Teen the
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I have to write another speech. As the Vice President has mentioned, we
Okay. I see a serious problem right here. Support African countries such as Central American Republic.
I don't think it's our country, CAO. That's an African country.
The sovereign state in Central America. So that's gonna have to change.
What?
Here. Support African countries such as South African Republic is South Africa. That is in Africa. Central American Republic is
In Central America? No, that's not the case.
I don't think it's necessary
No,
to put example. I mean, I guess it might be nice to put examples, but yeah, maybe you can look into countries where
Central African Republic. No, man, it's wrong. It's wrong. It's Central African.
Instead of just adding a random country, make sure you guys look into which countries are suffering most from coronavirus right now, and maybe you guys can put those countries in.
Yeah, these two countries. Yeah,
Central
these two
Africa,
countries.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why I wrote American. Not lucky you found it. Central American Republic. Which country is that?
Okay. No, never mind about the clause. Just stick with 3 for now.
Yes, thank you. Oh, you're the best. Oh man, you're the best. is so good to me. Ay, ay, ay. What is this? Are you ready? Let's go.
Still needs a little bit. We're like a few words done.
Oh,
Just
okay.
need a few
Then let's do this.
Okay.
Education, how far are you along? How many
We
more
have
minutes?
one more. We have 1.5 more class left.
Okay, let's do this then. It's 3 o'clock right now. I'm gonna give you guys about 10-minute break.
Mhm.
And for those who are not done, just finish it up. Let's do that.
Okay. Can we just make it 2 class? It's long though.
And I don't mind. Just okay. We'll start now. Okay. Are there any points or motions on the floor? The chair would look favorably upon the introduction motion to introduce the resolution. We will be introducing resolution in the order of foreign affairs. What is this? Protest. What is this? And then testing sites, and then education. We'll be going in that order. Are there any points or motions on the floor? Secretary of Homeland Security.
Motion to introduce resolutions.
That is not in order. The chair will entertain resolutions in the order the chair has just repeated. We should start with the Vice President's resolution. The Secretary of State, you're recognized.
Motion to introduce resolution done by the Vice President and the Secretary of State.
That is in order. The chair will now give everyone the link. So everyone, please go into this link. And the Vice President, is Vice President the main submitter? Yes. The Vice President, please read out the operative clauses only and deliver your opening speech. Your authorship speech.
Okay.
You'll have 5 minutes.
First operative speech determines that the United States should donate testing services towards the Middle East for benefits of, but not limited to, energy resources such as, but not limited to, oil, petroleum, natural gases, and phosphate. 2. Demands support for African countries such as South Africa and Central African Republic with ventilators and other medical supplies in exchange of, but not limited to, natural resources such as, but not limited to, cobalt, uranium, diamonds, gold, natural gases, petroleum. Welcomes any recommendation from other cabinet members of the United States.
Your 5 minutes starts from now.
Dear Cabinet members, the Secretary of State and the Vice President's resolution should be passed because by cooperating with other countries, our country can benefit with more resources and they can benefit by getting medical supplies, including ventilators, testing supplies, and etc. Thank you. I would like to yield my time to Secretary of State.
Actually, that's not how it goes. After you're done, I'm going to ask you. So, Vice President, you have 4 minutes and 30 seconds left. How would you like to yield your time?
I would like to yield my time to Secretary of State.
That is in order. Secretary of State, you have 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
As the Vice President of the United States has mentioned, by giving the other needing countries the supplies that they need for solving this COVID-19 pandemic, the United States gains multiple benefits, such as natural resources and energies, which as a nation, we need at most during these times. So we highly recommend all delegates to vote for our resolution because when we were benefiting others in return, I yield my time to any and all points of information.
Delegate, you have 3 minutes and 40 seconds left. How would you like to yield your time?
This delegate would like to yield his time to any and all points of information. Thank you.
That is in order. Are there any points or motions on the floor? Please raise your blue hand. Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
To the Secretary of State and I guess the Vice President, how do we plan on, does the user plan include countries such as Yemen and the Middle East along with African countries? Thank you.
In response to the Secretary of Homeland Security's question, yes, by saying to African countries, we include all countries in Africa as well as any other possible needing countries around the area. Thank you.
Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Points or motions? Are there any other POIs on the floor? Seeing none, Secretary of State, how would you like to yield the rest of your time? You have 22 minutes and 30 seconds left.
This delegate would like to yield his time to the chair. Thank you.
That is in order. Thank you. Okay. Are there any points or motions on the floor? The chair would look favorably upon any moderated caucus to discuss about the resolution and any possible amendments. Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
This delegate motions for a 5-minute moderated caucus for moderating the resolution. Thank you.
That is in order. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Hearing none, the committee will go into voting procedure for Secretary of Homeland Security's motion for moderated caucus of 5 minutes about debating about the resolution. I'm sorry, it's taking a little longer than. Okay. Oh, the Secretary of Secretary of State, are you a co-host? You're not, okay. Secretary of Education, you're a co-host, right?
Yes, I am. I forgot I was muted.
Is there a way for you to not be a co-host?
I think I have no idea. I can't take that away.
I think the host can remove her access as a co-host, like remove her.
I'll look into that. I have gotten 7 votes out of 10. Still need votes from 3 people. Okay. I'm still waiting on one more person. If you voted, please raise your hand, your physical hand. Secretary of Secretary of State and Secretary of Transportation, did you guys vote? Secretary of Transportation, did you vote? Secretary of Transportation. Secretary of Transportation.
Evan?
Ibna, did you vote? Did you vote, Yevin? Okay. I'm not sure why I'm still getting 10 votes. Okay. Anyways, with 10 votes for this motion passes. Delegates, you have 5 minutes. Oh, I'm so sorry. What's wrong with me? Secretary of Homeland Security, what is the individual speaking time?
Sorry, 30 seconds.
Thank you. We will have a revote. I am so sorry, delegates. I made a big mistake. We'll try it again. Keep in mind it's 30 seconds. I just didn't put it in. I am not sure why I'm only getting 10 votes. Did everybody vote?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you raise your hand one more time? I'm sorry, it's probably technical difficulty. Raise your hand, everybody. Okay. Okay. With 10 delegates for this motion clearly passes. Delegates, you have 5 minutes. Secretary of Homeland Security, would you like to go first or last?
Can I actually go last, please?
That is in order. Are there any delegates wishing to speak on this matter? Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Are there any delegates wishing to make amendments to this resolution? Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
The Secretary of Homeland Security proposes to make an amendment for countries that can't afford to repay the United States for these testing supplies.
Okay. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak?
Can I ask for a point of clarification?
Please raise your hand.
Okay.
Secretary of State, you're recognized.
Point of clarification. For the delegate of Homeland Security, by I don't know, by her amendment proposing if the nation
This wouldn't go under point of clarification. You can just speak up and say whatever you need to.
Okay, so many of our allying countries.
Okay, let's try this again.
Wait,
Secretary of State, you're recognized.
So many of our allying countries in the Middle East.
We're gonna start from when Secretary of State asks this question again. Okay. Okay, Secretary of State, you're recognized.
Okay, this delegate would like to ask the Secretary of Homeland Security, like by countries that are unable to pay, are we gonna be like fully like if we were to give them medical supplies, we'll be giving them us in terms of for free, in which we will gain nothing out of it, and that they would just be gaining the full benefit of our medical supplies. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
Okay, so for many of our allying countries in the Middle East and many of the African countries that we're allies with, they have no means to repay us, especially countries like Yemen, who are in the middle of a war currently. And I propose that if we do provide medical supply or COVID-19 testing supplies to these countries, that we allow them 5 years to repay us after we stop providing these supplies to them to ensure maximum safety currently. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Are there any delegates wishing to speak? The chair will entertain 3 more speakers for this moderated caucus. Are there any delegates who wish to make any amendments? The Vice President, you're recognized.
Agreeing with the Secretary of Homeland Security, the representative of Vice President see it as a friendly amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? The chair will entertain 1 more speaker, excluding the Secretary of Homeland Security, who will speak last on this matter. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of State, you're recognized.
Thank you, the Secretary of Homeland Security, for your previous answer. This delegate also, alongside with the Vice President, sees it as a friendly amendment in which both parties will agree on the terms that you have settled in, because this delegate also sees that countries such as Yemen, which has financial issues, may not be able to repay us at the exact moment we give them help. So we agree with your idea of a 5-year term after we stopped supplying with their needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
Okay, so yes, along with the Vice President and Secretary of State, thank you for your support. And I propose that we amend this resolution with this clause. Thank you.
Thank you. The time for the moderated caucus has ended. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Before we move on, let me explain how amendment process will work in this virtual MUN. So I've mentioned that there are friendly amendments and unfriendly amendments, I think. I hope I did. So in this case, Secretary of Homeland Security proposed an amendment, and the Secretary of State and the Vice President, who are the submitter and the co-submitter of this resolution, said, we agree to this. So this becomes a friendly amendment, in which Secretary of if this is signed by both the Secretary of Homeland Security, the Secretary of State, and the Vice President, and the chair approves it, it gets implemented into the document automatically without any voting procedure. So in this case, what the Secretary of Homeland Security would do is write out what clause that she's going to include and get it signed by the Secretary of State and the Vice President, so like a yes or a no. And then once she does, she will send the amendment to the chair. And once I approve it, then you can have the chair include it into the drafting resolution. For unfriendly amendments, let's say the Secretary of Education wants to make an unfriendly amendment, which means that it is not endorsed by all the submitters and the main submitters, should have to find 20%, which would be, we have 11 delegates present. So that would be three, I believe. Three, let's say including her. So find 2 more delegates who are who endorse this amendment. And once she gets a yes approval from them, she will send it to me. And then she can introduce the amendment like how we do with the resolution. Does everybody get that? And then we can go from there. Okay. Are there any points or motions on the floor? Are there any points or motions on the floor? The chair would look favorably upon moderated caucus on the topic of any more amendments. Delegates, please speak up. See, okay. Secretary of State, you're recognized.
This is a point of information. Is there any newly submitted amendments to the resolution?
No, we do not, and that wouldn't go under the point of information. But we do not have any amendments in. Are there any points or motions on the floor? The Vice President, you're recognized.
Motion for a 6-minute moderated caucus for the purpose of adding any more amendments to the resolution with the individual speaking time of 45 seconds.
That is in order. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Seeing none, we will go into voting procedure for Secretary, the Vice President's moderated caucus of 6 minutes with an individual speaking time of 45 seconds, discussing amendments on resolution. Delegates, please answer the poll.
Chair? I need to go.
You can go ahead and go if you have to go right now.
Thank you, guys. Hope you guys have a great day today, okay? Bye-bye.
With 10 delegates for, this motion clearly passes. Vice President, would you like to speak first or last?
I would like to speak last.
That is in order. With that being said, are there any points removed? Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
This is addressed to the Vice President. How do you suggest that we support and help our allies that are struggling with terrorist insurgencies such as Boko Haram that have heightened since this COVID-19 pandemic? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Are there any delegates wishing to speak? The Vice President, you're recognized.
Could the Secretary of Homeland Security repeat her question?
Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
So many of our allying countries in the Middle East and in African countries that are mentioned in your resolution paper are struggling with fighting terrorist insurgencies like the infamous Boko Haram that have heightened since COVID-19. So their attacks on our allying countries' militaries have gone a lot more violent and vicious since COVID-19, and they're using this pandemic as a way to support their campaign. So how do you suggest that we help our allying countries that are struggling with this? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Seeing none, the Vice President, would you like to speak last on this matter?
I will speak first. Oh wait, yeah. Do I just speak now?
Yes.
Okay. The Vice President believes we should try to help our neighboring country by trying to help relocate the families who are in trouble or like in danger, and try to cooperate with other countries by supplying them with different medical supplies, like said in the resolution, to try to reduce the number of COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, the chair, on chair's discretion, the chair will close the moderated caucus early. The chair has gotten a friendly amendment from the Secretary of Homeland Security, which has been signed by the Vice President. The chair will make necessary changes to the document right now. The chair will put this as operative clause 3. Oops. What have I done? Actually, we'll just make it chair 4. With the changes made, are there any points or motions on the floor? The chair would look favorably upon motion to close debate on this resolution. Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
Motion to close debate on this resolution.
That is in order. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Seeing none, the chair will entertain 2 speakers for and 2 speakers against this motion. Delegates who wish to speak for this motion, please raise your hands now. So delegates that wish for the debate on this resolution to end, please raise your hands now. Secretary of Homeland Security and one more. Secretary of Education. Delegates who are against this motion, please raise your placard. Delegates who wish to speak against this motion, please raise your placards now. Seeing none, the chair will entertain Secretary of Homeland Security, followed by the Secretary of Education on this matter. So, Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
The delegate for the Secretary of Homeland Security proposes that we close the debate on this resolution because we have established how we can provide testing services to our allies in Middle Eastern countries and African countries, and we have also provided a reason of how we have also provided a way for how to be repaid in the future from countries that can't necessarily repay us right now, and that is and as of now we haven't shared the most important issue, which is providing safety to our allying countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary of Education, you're recognized.
This delegate believes that we should close debate on this issue because we have a lot of resolutions that we also have to debate about. And second, we also made amendments, necessary amendments, as the Secretary of Homeland Security has addressed to us on our committee. And third, we did not have any other extra amendments given to the chair, neither were other delegates wanting to give any other amendments. So we believe that this delegate believes that we should close debate on this issue and vote on the resolution.
Thank you, Delegate. We will now move into procedural voting on this motion. The chair will just take the voting by the blue hand. Delegates for this motion, please raise your hands now. Delegates against? With 9 delegates for and 1 delegate against, this motion clearly passes. Before we get into substantive voting procedure, the chair would like to have another roll call, make sure who is here and who is not, and to double check on the abstentions. The chair will do another roll call. Secretary of Homeland Security.
Present.
Secretary of Education.
Present and voting.
Secretary, the Ambassador to the UN.
Present.
Secretary of Housing and Urban Development.
Present.
Secretary of Health and Human Services. Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Present.
Secretary of Energy.
Present.
The Vice President.
Present.
Secretary of Commerce.
Present.
Secretary of Transportation.
Present.
Secretary of Labor.
Present.
With 10 delegates present, the simple majority will be set at 6, and the super majority will be set at 7. With this, we will move into substantive voting procedure for the Vice President's resolution. Delegates, the chair will issue a poll. For the purpose of this Voting procedure, this will be voted as a whole. Did everybody get a chance to vote? Okay, with 6 delegates, 7 delegates for, 1 delegate against, and 2 delegates abstaining, this motion clearly passes. Clapping is in order. With one resolution out of the way, are there any points or motions on the floor? The chair will look favorably upon motion to introduce resolution 2. Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
Motion to introduce resolution 2.
That is in order. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Seeing none, may the main speaker of the resolution 2 please read out the operative clauses.
1 establishes that June 19th, the day that slaves were freed from the Confederation, announced in Texas by Union General Gordon Granger, be recognized and celebrated nationally as Juneteenth. 2 determines that the executive order on safe policing and safe communities be A, set into motion as soon as possible, B, rewritten to establish that any and all law enforcement officers found to disobey any law enforcement protocols be put on leave until proven innocent within 24 hours of accusations. 3 calls for additional training not mentioned in the executive order on safe policing for safe communities, or on safe policing for safe communities for law enforcement officers to A, handle different people of color, and B, have no racial bias when enforcing the law. 4 authorizes for the Department of Homeland Security to work alongside with the Attorney General to establish standards that state and local law enforcement agencies are required to follow in order to ensure maximum justice for the people of the United States, more specifically people of color. And 5 establishes that to maintain safety and order in protests, mainly Black Lives Matter protests regarding COVID-19, that A, we suggest to protest organizers that masks be worn and social distancing be implemented, and B, during protests, not allow any law enforcement officers to confine protesters to a certain area or block off specific areas from protesters. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate, now you have 5 minutes for your authorship speech.
By doing this, we can ensure national justice for all citizens, specifically people of color, while ensuring practical safety during these trying times. Thank you.
Delegate, you have 4 minutes and 49 seconds left. How would you like to yield your time?
To all points of motion.
That is in order. Are there any POIs on the floor? Are there any POIs on the floor? Secretary of Education.
In clause number 3, subclause number B, subclause letter B, have no racial bias when enforcing the law. How will we hold the law enforcement officers reliable for enforcing and not having any racial biases?
You can go ahead and speak without being recognized.
So in response to the Secretary of Education, subclause B to clause 3, to operative clause 3, mainly shows the goals of what the additional training that's not mentioned in the executive order on safety policing for safe communities would have on these law enforcement officers. So if we would be providing them training to not have racial biases while enforcing law. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other POIs on the floor? Are there any other POIs on the floor? Seeing none. Delegate, you have 3 minutes and 30 seconds. How would you like to yield your time?
I would like to yield to the chair.
That is in order. Are there, with the cabinet 2 introduced, are there any points or motions on the floor? The chair would look favorably upon either of the caucus to discuss any amendments on this resolution. Are there any points or motions on the floor? Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, you're recognized.
This delegate would like to motion the moderated caucus to the topic of adding any amendments to this resolution with the total time of 10 minutes and the individual speaking time of 50 seconds.
That is in order. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Seeing none, the chair will cast a vote on, the chair will make a vote on Secretary of Housing and Urban Development's, Housing and Urban Development's motion for a moderated caucus, total time of 10 minutes with individual speaking time of 50 seconds on any amendments. Please vote now. With 8 delegates for and 2 delegates against, this motion clearly passes. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, how would you like to speak first or last?
This delegate would like to speak last.
That is in order. Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Education.
This delegate has a question to the Secretary of Homeland Security regarding the clause number 4, where it says, alongside with Attorney General to establish standards that the state and local law enforcement agencies are required to follow, blah, blah, blah. What standards are the delegate of Secretary of Homeland Security specifically mentioning in this clause?
Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
In response to the Secretary of Education, just a little background on operative clause number 4, sorry. According to the executive order on safe policing for safe communities, currently the Attorney General has complete power over setting standards for law enforcement agencies to follow, certifying these law enforcement agencies, and then providing funds to these law enforcement agencies. So by allowing the Homeland Security to work alongside with the Attorney General, they would both be able to set standards to ensure justice for all citizens, for all law enforcement agencies to follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Health and Human Services, you're recognized.
This delegate has a question to the Secretary of Homeland Security about clause number 5. So when the law enforcement officers, like what tools will they be using or what equipment will they be using to handle protesters, but not in a violation of their rights or in not violation of what they're protesting?
Thank you. Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
So within this resolution, and this delegate believes that we shouldn't be limiting the rights to protesters, as it's stated in the very first clause that with the First Amendment, citizens are given the right to protest, and we try to limit that as much as we try to limiting the protesters' rights as much as possible. So we hope that by passing this resolution, along with the executive order, that protests won't be continuing as much. And if they are, police and law enforcement agencies, if they violate any of the standards set by the Attorney General and the Department of Homeland Security, then they won't be given any funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, you're recognized.
This delegate will like to ask a question about this resolution's clause 5 and operative clause A. Is that how do you ensure that the protester will follow the social distancing and security and safety rules without the regulation of the law enforcement officers? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other points? Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
So in response to the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, for operative clause 5, subclause A, there's no way that we can for sure limit protesters and ensure that they can fully social distance without placing local laws for them to social distance. But within this resolution, this delegate, along with the main submitters, or this delegate, along with the co-submitters, tried not to limit the rights of protesters and tried to ensure justice nationally. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Seeing that there are no delegates wishing to speak, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, would you like to speak last on this matter right now?
Yes. I just speak. In agree to the resolution 2, this delegate of Secretary of Housing and Urban Development like to suggest an amendment to subclause 5B. Is that this delegate believes that the Secretary, this resolution should add a more specific subclause and sub-resolution to ensure that the freedom of protesters is fully implied. Thanks.
Thank you. The time for the moderated caucus has ended. Are there any points or motions on the floor? Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
This delegate motions for a 10-minute moderated caucus with 30-second individual speaking time to discuss the amendment proposed by Secretary of Housing and Urban Development.
That is in order. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Seeing none, the chair will quickly make a vote for Secretary of Homeland Security's motion for a moderated caucus of 10 minutes with the individual speaking time of 30 seconds on amendment proposed by the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. It's taking a little longer than expected. Okay. With 7 delegates for and 3 delegates against, this motion clearly passes. Secretary of Homeland Security, would you like to speak first or last?
First.
That is in order. You're recognized.
So, in response to the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development's amendment for this resolution, he still wonders how the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development would like to implement the freedom of protesters, and how that delegate feels that the freedom of protesters have been limited within this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Are there any delegates wishing to speak on this matter? Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, you're recognized.
This delegate would like to restate her suggestion on the amendments to this resolution. Well, this delegate believes that agrees with this resolution. There's no limited of protest freedom in this resolution. But this delegates also think that it's really necessary for the resolution to be more explained and specifically explained toward how do they want to ensure. Thanks.
Thank you, delegate. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Are there any other delegates wishing to speak on this matter? Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
Sorry, in response to the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, do you think you could rephrase how you want this amendment? Sorry, I didn't quite understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, you're recognized.
So, to rephrase my statement, this delegate thinks that it's necessary for the resolution to be more well explained in the way that how the secretary and delegates who is addressing this resolution to explain specifically how do they want to use this resolution in order to not limit the freedom of protesters.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Are there any delegates wishing to speak on this matter? Could be as simple as I agree or I disagree with this amendment. Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
With all due respect to the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, I disagree with your proposal for a new amendment because, as it's stated in subclause B of Operative Clause 5, during protest, we are not to allow law enforcement officers to confine protesters to a certain area or block a specific areas from protest. And throughout all the other operative clauses, it is stated that we don't want to limit the rights of our citizens. So with all due respect, I disagree with your amendment.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Due to time constraints, the chair will entertain 2 more speakers at most. Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Any delegates? Seeing none, at the chair's discretion, the chair will close the debate on this moderated caucus. Are there any points or motions on the floor? Before we go into that, are there any amendments? Are there any delegates planning any amendments? Please raise your blue hand if you're planning on submitting an amendment. Seeing none, are there any points or motions on the floor? Are there any points or motions on the floor? If there are no amendments being created, the chair would look favorably upon motion to close debate on this resolution. Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
Motion to close debate on this resolution.
That is in order. The chair will entertain. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Seeing none, the chair will entertain 1 speaker for and 1 speaker against this motion. Who would like to speak for this motion? Secretary of Homeland Security, who'd like to speak against this motion? Seeing none, Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
This delegate proposes that we end the debate on this resolution because we do have a substantial amount of other resolutions to cover. And as there were no amendments made to this resolution, there is really nothing else to add to it. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go into procedural voting for this motion to close debate. On resolution 2. I'm sorry, this is taking a little longer than. Okay. With the unanimous vote, this motion clearly passes. We will now be moving into substantive voting procedure. So if you've stated that you will be present and voting, please do not abstain from. Please do not abstain. Well, you may not abstain. The chair has just launched a poll. With 7 delegates for and none against and 3 abstaining, this motion clearly passes. Clapping is this resolution clearly passes. Clapping is in order. We will now be moving on to Cabinet 3. Are there any points or motions on the floor? Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, you're recognized.
This delegate would like to motion to introduce the resolution 3.
That is in order. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Seeing none, may the main submitter of this resolution please read out the operative clauses.
Okay. Request the country to safely accelerate the authorizations and availability of COVID-19 test sites for all states and territories by means including but not limited to allocating more funds towards the creation of test sites in urban and rural locations, providing the necessary supplies and technology for the availability of tests, ensuring that all safety standards are followed on the test sites. Second operative clause urges fellow cabinet members to open a special transportation system for individuals who were approved for testing through their local or state health departments by means, including but not limited to creating different special transportation lines for people who will be taking COVID-19 RT-PCR tests and patients who are confirmed positive for COVID-19. While still maintaining social distancing, people who are utilizing the transportation system are required to wear safety equipment, masks, gloves, etc., check their body temperature, and getting sprayed before entering. Operative Clause 3 establishes the role as frontline workers in testing sites as dangerous and their great need of protection at all times should be a priority by means, including but not limited to, enforcing the CARES Act and additional laws to provide frontline workers with financial assistance, creating suitable working schedules for frontline workers to avoid the problems of direct contact and overworking, and expanding healthcare and necessary disease prevention to the frontline workers and their families. Thank you.
Can everybody open the document? Try refreshing. I just changed the settings. Can everybody open the document? Yes, thumbs up. Okay. Secretary of Health and Human Services, you have 5 minutes to deliver your authorship speech.
So the fact that the number of COVID-19 cases in the United States is having a surge again with this in this month of June 20, or last month in June 2020, with highest records for hospitalizations, it's necessary that we come up with a resolution to create more testing sites for where people around the U.S. has all the access to it, and also offer transportation because not all public transportations are available at all times. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. You have 4 minutes and 30 seconds left. How would you like to yield your time?
This delegate would like to yield her time to the Secretary of Commerce.
Secretary of Commerce, you have 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay, so just like what the Secretary of Health and Human Services said, because that the COVID-19 cases in the United States is there's a lot of them, so we would like to make more testing sites in order for people to get tested. And many things were taken into consideration, like the frontline workers, their health, and how to take or be provided in order for really appreciate it if other secretaries of the United States would help and approve this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate, you have 3 minutes and 30 seconds left. How would you like to use your time?
I would like to yield the time to the chair.
That is in order. With the Cabinet 3 introduced, are there any points or motions on the floor? Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
Motion for a 10-minute caucus with 40-second speaking time on Cabinet 3's resolution.
That is in order. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Seeing none, we'll be voting on Cabinet 3 on Secretary of Homeland Security's motion for a moderated caucus of 10 minutes and the individual speaking time of 40 seconds on Resolution Cabinet 3. The chair will launch a poll in just a second. The chair has launched the poll. Please answer the poll. With 9 delegates for and 1 delegate against, this motion clearly passes. Secretary of Homeland Security, would you like to speak first or last?
First, please.
That is in order. You're recognized.
So in response to the Secretary of Health and Human Services, how do you propose to allocate funds for these new testing sites? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Health and Human Services, you're recognized.
To answer the Secretary of Homeland Security's question, that is why we planned out our resolution so we could convince the cabinet members of the United States to vote for it. And we also had the Secretary of Treasury as our co-submitter, but they're unable to come today.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
Sorry, another question for the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Around how many more testing sites are you planning to open up? And are they going to be in specific areas or all over the nation? Thank you.
Okay, Secretary of Health and Human Services, you're recognized.
To answer the Secretary of Homeland Security, so first we would have to do research on the specific number because we do not have a specific number right now, but we do want to open up testing sites all across the nation because we believe that not everyone has exact access to it, because in some rural locations there aren't testing sites, while some urban locations that the COVID-19 hospitalizations are increasing and that people testing positive is increasing as well. We would also have to open up there. So it has to be all across the nation.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Education, you're recognized.
This is another question to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. In clause number 2, subclause letter B, while still managing social distancing, people utilizing transportation systems are required to wear and blah, 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 blah. And you've listed out protocols to take with these transportation systems. However, like buses, if there are more people, then that bus driver earns more money for that single time. So how will we check if these transportation system drivers or just the people in general who are involved with the transportation system are following through with these protocols?
Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Health and Human Services, you're recognized.
To answer the Secretary of Education's question about how will we manage with the frontline workers and everyone involved in the transportation systems, that's why it has to, we plan to have like restrictions on them. Like they're gonna be frontline workers, so they're going to have like restrictions on themselves, and that's why they're going to have some benefits as well, like taking the test earlier than being hired, and they're going to have their families also tested, as mentioned in operative clause 3.
Thank you. Secretary of Commerce, followed by the Secretary of Energy, you're recognized.
So adding on to the Secretary of Health and Human Services, for the transportation, it would be a special transportation. So as like what you asked, the bus driver will not be counted like how many people are riding the bus, then how much money he would own. He would earn. It is like the same paying for him, because he is also, or he or she is also a frontline worker and would also like earn other benefits for being a frontline worker, and he would be required, he or she would be required to check if all the people riding the bus like follows the social distancing and other things.
Thank you. Secretary of Energy, you're recognized, followed by the Secretary of Homeland Security.
The Secretary of Energy has a question. How will the frontline workers be chosen?
Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
This delegate also has another question. In a situation like a bus driver would be able to check if those who are using the public transportation are following social distancing protocols or not. But what about in situations like like railroads or like using a metro system? Each car doesn't have a conductor. So how would we ensure social distancing within with transportation like metros? Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, you're recognized.
Again, this delegate would like to answer the question of Secretary of Energy. Actually, no. This delegate would like to ask the Secretary of Energy to restate her question in order to answer it. Thanks.
Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Health and Human Services, you're recognized.
In response to the Secretary of Homeland Security, we do not plan at first to use the metro system exactly for that reason, because there is no conductor. First, we have to make sure that they do follow the social distancing. That's the #1 priority right now due to the pandemic. So we would have to make sure that there's a frontline worker like assisting them and making sure that they're following protocols in order to use the transportation system.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Due to time constraints, the chair will entertain 2 more speakers for this moderated caucus. Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Education, you're recognized.
I support the Secretary of Health and Human Services idea of having a special transportation system, because that's what we enforce in Korea, where people who get tested, they have to either ride a bus or a taxi equipped with all these supplies, the mask, hand sanitizers, and there's even a wall between the passengers and the driver, and that's provided specifically by the government, and they're not allowed to ride metro systems because this bus will drive them to long distances. So I believe these are protocols we should take extra caution, so that these diseases are not transmitted to these bus drivers and these frontline workers.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wish? Well, the chair will entertain 1 more speaker for this moderated caucus. Are there any delegates wishing to speak on this matter? Seeing none, the chair will close the moderated caucus. Is there any amendment coming, being planned on? Is anyone writing a amendment right now? Is anyone planning on writing an amendment? Seeing none, are there any points or motions on the floor? Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
Motion to end the debate on this resolution.
That is in order. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Seeing none, the chair will launch a poll. With 9 delegates for and 1 delegate against, this motion clearly passes. Are there any delegates wishing to speak for this motion? The chair will entertain one. Are there any Secretary of Health and Human Services, you're recognized. Are there any delegates wishing to speak against? Seeing none, Secretary of Health and Human Services, you're recognized.
This delegate believes that we should end the debate about this resolution because it is true that the number of COVID-19 cases is increasing once again in the United States, and there should be official transportation systems that allows several people and people who doesn't have regular access to transportation to be able to go to the testing sites, and frontline workers and their safety should also be put into consideration besides the patients.
Thank you. You'll now be voting on this. We'll be voting on Cabinet 3. Sorry, it's just. Okay. This is a substantive voting procedure. With 9 delegates for and 1 delegate abstaining, this. Oh yes, it was supposed. It says Cabinet 2, but it was supposed to mean Cabinet 3. With 9 delegates for and none against, and 1 abstaining, this motion clearly passes. Clapping is in order. We have successfully passed Cabinet 3. We are on to Cabinet 4. Are there any points or motions on the floor? Secretary of Education, you're recognized.
Delegate motions to introduce resolution number 4.
That is in order. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Seeing none, may the main speaker please read out the operative clauses as soon as I post the link this time. Okay, could you please read out the operative clauses and deliver your speech?
Okay. Dear Cabinet members, the Secretary of Education, Secretary of Transportation, and the Secretary of Labor believes that all member states with the number of coronavirus cases increasing or with a government that deems a national crisis should change their traditional education course to online teaching for the purpose of expanding safety protocols within the education sector that would A, require students to always keep in check with their homework by methods including but not limited to I, contacting their parents directly for school notices, aka homework, school events, grades, even if the students are in typo. It's supposed to be if the students are in elementary school. I contact the students and their parents directly for school notices if the students are in middle school. I requiring the students themselves to take responsibility for their grades and attendance if they're a high schooler, and contacting their parents directly for semester school grades. B, require students to require teachers to take students' attendance on time, along with I, following through with their same schedule provided in schools. I, being strict with target marks and report these records to principals and parents. And C, be flexible about tasks not being completed due to online restrictions. Clause number 2 recommends all member states with the number of coronavirus cases decreasing or with a government that allows less strict social distancing rules are allowed to follow through with the traditional face-to-face education courses that would mandatorily A, require schools fund for supplies needed to keep students safe from transmitting the disease, including but not limited to masks and hand sanitizers. B, requires schools to check students' temperature twice, first before entering the school campus and second before they're dismissed from school, and follows the mandatory actions listed below. If students are showing cases of fever before they enter the campus, they have to follow through with the requirements listed but not limited to. 1, being sent to a nearby testing site after informing their guardians. 2, requiring them to prove to the school that they're not infected with COVID-19 if they want to attend the school after they show fever symptoms with an official medical certificate. And 3, require students to follow up with school and lectures through online during their quarantine. If students show no cases of fever, then they're allowed into the school campus. If the students have fever symptoms for their dismissed home, the student herself/himself will be sent to a nearby testing site along with the group of students who ate lunch with the student who has the fever. Okay.
You have 5 minutes starting from now.
In this resolution, the Secretary of Education, the Secretary of Transportation, and the Secretary of Labor work to include situations where schools want to have a face-to-face lecture and a online course lecture. And we believe it should be mandatory for them to have an online course, a lecture, if the number of coronavirus cases are increasing, because there are higher chances of this disease transmitting if these students are going to school. And at the end, it's just a simple explanation. We put the person who were showing fever symptoms go to the testing site, but also along with students they ate lunch with, because while they eat lunch, there are cases where they would have conversations or where they would share their food, and that would lead to transmitting this disease. However, during normal cases or during normal class times, there will be social distancing rules enforced. So there will be distances between the students. So there are no cases of probable transmissions between these students if they didn't eat lunch together. So that's that's a consideration that we took into account while making our clause number 2 resolution. And if any cabinet members would be willing to make any amendments or add, strike, please feel free to. And thank you.
Delegate, you have 3 minutes and 30 seconds left. How would you like to yield your time?
This delegate would like to yield to any and all point of information.
That is in order. Are there any points of information on the floor? Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
This is a question for the Secretary of Education. How do you propose to have online education happening for those that don't have the technology for online education? Thank you.
So in response to the Secretary of Homeland Security, in clause number 1 under, I believe, in clause number 2 under clause A, subclause A, we said that it would require schools to fund for supplies needed to keep students safe from transmitting the disease. And we only put masks and hand sanitizers. However, below, they said that if they have to go in quarantine because they show fever symptoms, and they have to go through online courses. So therefore, if the schools have any iPad or computers, then they will have to provide for the students so that they'll have access to any and all online education or online lectures that they go on in their classes.
Are there any other points of information on the floor? Secretary of Health and Human Services, you're recognized.
This delegate has a question for the Secretary of Education also. How do you take into account for the teachers and professors in the certain schools that do not know how to use the online platform that the students are required to use? Like, how will they be helped, or how will they like get to learn how to use it?
Okay, so one other way is that all these schools are creating these programs for teachers. It may not necessarily be as fancy as a program. It might just be a literal school or teacher meeting, and then either the principal or anyone who has the idea of better online education or efficient online education method, they would propose the idea, and then the teachers would adapt to it, and then they would try to enforce that lecture style on online. If there are any problems, then there will be more frequent teacher meetings. Try to keep everyone on the same page, and then that's how we will follow through with these online lectures given to students.
Are there any other points of information? Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
Another question for the Secretary of Education. How do you propose for elementary students like first graders to be able to use the technology at home, sometimes alone, to be educated online? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Secretary of Homeland Security. That's an excellent question, and that's what we take into consideration while drafting our subclause I. Because we said contacting their parents directly for school notices, homework, school events, grades if the students are elementary students. We drafted this subclause in order to prevent cases where elementary students do not know their classes, or elementary students did not know that they had school on this day or when their school starts, etc. So all the homework, all the school events, all the just school notices in general will be given to their parents. And if they're in middle school, then that will be given to their parents and their students. And if they're in high school, then the high school students should be responsible solely for their own classes, lectures, and grades. And only the grades will be given to their parents.
Thank you. Secretary of Homeland Security, this will be the last point of information.
In response to the Secretary of Education, how do you propose for parents to be able to provide students their homework if they have full-time jobs and they don't have time to help their children with their education? Thank you.
One other way the students will be able to access this online or homework, as the Secretary of Homeland Security has stated, there will be students with parents who will have full-time work. For those students, we will require teachers to have a stronger follow-up system where the teachers will take more care of those students, try to see if the students know how to access these courses online, if the students know when they should come online and participate in these lectures, and if they show more frequent tardy grades, then they'll contact their parents, and they will contact the school, and then they'll try to contact the student itself and create a stronger solution for these students to be able to fairly attend the lectures.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any points or motions on the floor? Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
Ms. Delegate motions for a 10-minute moderated caucus with 30-second speaking time on this resolution.
That is in order. Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Seeing none, the chair will quickly launch a poll. With 8 delegates for and 2 delegates against, this motion clearly passes. Secretary of Homeland Security, would you like to speak first or last?
First, please.
You're recognized.
So when on-ground learning starts up again, there's no way for us to fully ensure maximum safety. While we can implement hand sanitizers within educational facilities and require students and faculty to wear masks, there's nothing about sanitation of classrooms. So I propose an amendment that calls for sanitation of classrooms between class periods to be put into place in order for educational facilities to open back up on ground in-person education. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Education, you're recognized. You're muted.
This delegate agrees with the amendment proposed by the Secretary of Homeland Security, and this delegate also asks for the Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Transportation to say if they agree or not, so that this can be either passed as a friendly amendment.
Thank you. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, you're recognized.
This delegate would like to ask a question about this resolution, is that how do you ensure the safety of opening the access to young teenagers to the internet while they are receiving the distance or remotely education? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other points or are there any delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Education, you're recognized.
My apologies for the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. This delegate could not hear what you were asking. Please state it one more time.
Are there any other Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, you're recognized?
This delegate would like to ask that in this resolution, how do you ensure the safety of opening the access to the internet for the young teenagers while they are receiving the remotely education? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Education.
Okay. This delegate would like to ask the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development one more time if the question was how would we ensure the safety of students who are taking online courses? If that's the question, thank you.
Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, you're recognized.
This delegate's question is asking that considering that the teenagers might not be able to filter all the information they receive from the internet. So this delegate would like to ask, how do you ensure the safety of opening the access to the internet for the young teenagers while they are receiving the remotely education? Thank you.
Secretary of Education, you're recognized.
Okay. So this delegate believes that what the delegate of Secretary of Housing and Urban Development was mentioning was the cyberbullying or these unfiltered internet world that we necessarily do not want to give access to for elementary students. However, for the elementary students, we can do so by creating this internet safety browser. That would be a whole nother resolution that we would have to come up with. However, this is just an idea this delegate would like to voice in. And if we only give access to, for example, Zoom to, okay.
Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Education, you're recognized.
And continuing the speech, if we give access to only Zoom and tell them how to access Zoom online, then that would not necessarily lead to any other problems with the elementary students browsing through his internet, etc. However, the elementary students these days do know how to browse through internet, and I believe we're not just opening up internet for them through school, and there are other ways they can access internet.
Thank you. Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, you're recognized.
This delegate fully agree with the idea that was proposed by the Secretary of Education about the internet safety education. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other delegates wishing to speak? Due to time constraints, the chair will entertain 2 more speakers. Are there any delegates wishing to speak on this matter? Secretary of Education, you're recognized.
This delegate calls on the Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Transportation to state whether they agree or not with the amendment proposed by the Secretary of Homeland Security so that we may propose it in a friendly amendment.
Are there any delegates wishing to speak? Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
I feel that, or this delegate feels that the Secretary of Transportation and Secretary of Labor might have forgotten my amendment, so let me repeat it. My amendment calls for sanitation of classrooms between class periods for educational facilities to follow in order to have on-ground personal education. And this would be put in place to ensure maximum safety for students and faculty. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. The chair, at the chair's discretion, no, the time for the moderator caucus has ended. Are there any points or motions on the floor? Secretary of Homeland Security, are you writing your amendment right now?
It's been written.
Okay. Are you getting it passed through the Transportation and Labor?
I'm trying to.
Okay. Secretary of Labor and Secretary of Transportation, could you please respond to Secretary of Homeland Security? And are there any other delegates planning on writing another amendment? Are there any points or motions on the floor? Secretary of Labor and Secretary of Transportation, have you answered Homeland Security's question?
Chair?
Yes.
Secretary of Labor and Secretary of Transportation texted me privately saying that they agree.
Okay. Are there any points or motions on the Secretary of Homeland Security? Could you please send me your amendment? Is this another operative clause?
This delegate believes that that amendment could go under clause number 2 and subclause C.
Okay. Secretary of Education, do you have the? Yeah, I'll send it to you. Could you make the appropriate changes onto your document?
Yes.
With that being said, are there any points or motions on the floor? If there are no amendments being written, the chair would look favorably upon a motion to close debate on this resolution. Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
Motion to close debate on this resolution.
That is in order. Are there any other delegates wishing to? Are there any other points or motions on the floor? Seeing none, the chair will quickly. Delegates who wish to speak for this motion, please raise your hands now. The chair will entertain one. Secretary of Homeland Security, are there any delegates wishing to speak against? Seeing none, Secretary of Homeland Security, you're recognized.
This delegate believes that we should end debate on this resolution because it's quite lengthy and much has been covered within it. And as of now, there are no amendments being written for it, and there have been no other motions for caucuses to speak about it. So therefore we should end the debate on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair will, please raise your placards if you vote for this motion. With a unanimous vote, this motion clearly passes. The chair will quickly launch a poll on the substantive voting procedure. The chair has spelled cabinet wrong, but it's okay. With the unanimous vote, this motion passes. Clapping is this resolution passes. Clapping is in order. Are there any points or motions on the floor? The chair would look favorably upon motion to adjourn the meeting. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development.
This delegate would like to motion to adjourn the meeting.
That is in order. At the chair's discretion, that motion is approved. Clapping is in order. Congratulations, delegates.
We finished.
Yes, we're done. We'll be doing another one of these next week, so don't be too excited.
And this is only 3 hours each day, but then the next one is going to be, I don't know, was it like 6 hours? So total around like 14 hours that we're going to invest.
So we'll get more debate time and we'll get more amendment time as well.
I can see Tina crying. Okay, so there are around, at most, really most, around 25 to 50 delegates in one committee. So this is a really, really, really small one. There are only 10 people for this one. And then for the people who are attending that committee, they did that research for 2 months. And they're absorbed into the roles, they're professionals, and then they actually represent the delegates themselves. And they're mostly people who like public speaking. So there will be a lot of debate. There will be a lot of, there may be, not cursing, but then, you know, respectfully saying no. And then there will be a lot of those kind of stuff in the actual NMIMUN debate. And it will be more dynamic than what you guys have experienced today. Next week, we're gonna have our NMIMUN final committee, as you guys know, and it will be on the topic that you guys wrote your position paper on. And there will be around 4 to 5 delegates from SISMUN who will be participating along with you guys. It's just for more delegate, more fun, and they will participate in the debate if there will be no one talking. Okay, so it's just they'll just be there, but don't rely on them to keep the debate going. Just do as you guys did today. This past 2 fun committees, and you guys will be okay. Okay.
Congratulations. We will post the points either today or next week, as well as the position paper creating points.
Alan, who talked the most? The top 2 people.
Yes, I actually have record of whoever, like every single time everyone talked. So I do have a list here. So I'll just say whoever talked the most is Milan for both days. And looks like Lindsay is next up. Tied with Holly today, actually. So congratulations, everybody.
Congrats.
See you guys next week. Okay, I'm cutting out a little bit, right? I'll see you guys next week.
Okay, good job.
Thank you.
Bye.
Wait, may I ask, what will happen if like we put down our signatories?
Signatories are just people who agree with you. or who wants to talk about the resolution. So what you would do in an actual committee is you would go around people and say, would you like to be my signature? Would you like to be the signature? Would you like? So it's just like this process where you have to go through and ask people if they want to talk about your resolution or not.
Oh, so it's like asking before the moderated caucus, like, can
Before
you
the
please talk
interview.
about
Yeah.
talk about? Oh, okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you, guys.
Guys, good job.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. 예비 잘 잤어? I'm gonna kick Mr. Witt out now. He is not here right now. I don't know how to kick him out. Oh no, he's a co-host, so I can't kick him out. Okay. So we would have to. Mr. Witt's gonna hear all this later now. Whatever you talk about now. So James says, did he talk to you about why he's leaving?
No.
Okay, I told him to. That guy. So he has his parents wanted him to do something. So talk to him later about it. Ask him why. I wasn't too sure. Oh, I'm so tired. I don't think I've ever talked to this much in a conference. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've shared one. That might be why.
At first you're like saying points, motions, what?
Yeah. I mean, I get those confused all the time anyways. So.
Oh my gosh, actually I have to find the NMIMUN chair. It's kind of depressing.
I'm a busy man.
We have to grade their position paper.
Yeah, so who's reading the position papers?
Hyunbin, James, Kevin, Mac,
I mean James, Mac,
and Unbi.
Mbai. Okay. I mean James, Mac, Mbai.
So 5 people.
I see 4. Wait, you?
No. James, Kevin, Mac,
Kevin,
Unbi,
okay.
Hyunbin.
Kevin, Humbi. Okay. I know the 5. Okay. I'll have to read them anyways, but I'm just gonna read them.
Then I'll read them too. No, but then I can't. Oh, okay, I'll read them.
So I just sent this. Let's have James do this. Points, and you can work
I didn't
with.
talk much today. Oh, you didn't show the people.
Show the people what?
I can't see the names. I can just see tick marks.
Right. Forgot. Ignore my notes at the top. They're just notes that I took.
I didn't talk much today, right? I'm really happy.
You didn't. That's why I was struggling, because you didn't talk much. Okay, so okay, so you work with the 5, get the position paper points done.
Oh, wait. Can you contact MB? I'll contact everyone else, but can you contact MB?
Why? This being recorded, by the way.
I know, but then because does something happen?
This is being recorded, by the way. I'm just saying.
Okay, so I'll take care of. I don't even know if I can take care of Hyunbin. Well,
I don't have Umi's phone number. I only have her phone number on Saipan.
Messenger.
Oh, she's coming back to Saipan tomorrow.
Today.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I'll tell Hyunbin, Kevin,
Mac,
and James about it, and then can you tell Mac and MB? Trying to avoid as much classmate thing. as possible.
Who? Sorry, I'm like, my internet's really bad right now.
So
let's
Mac
just-
and Unbi, just tell them what they have to grade.
Mac and then by.
So how many position papers are there? So there are 12. And how many graders do we have? We have 6 graders, right?
5. James, 현빈, 현재,
And me.
your classmate. Can you hear? I'm frozen. I know. To me, you're frozen. Okay. There's 5 people, so let's just have everybody do 2, and then have James do 4. Okay.
James do 4.
Have James do 3. Have
Kevin
like
do 2.
Okay, Kevin do 2,
Unbi do 2. Mac does 2.
and then you want Hyunbin to do 3.
Hyunbin do 2. James does 3.
James do 4. If everybody does 2 except for James, then James has to do 4.
Uh-oh. Okay, then we'll make Kevin do 2.
Kevin do 3.
3. And then James do 3.
Okay,
But
sounds good.
Alan, can you tell Unbi to do Soyoung and Sam? Actually, Soyoung and
소영이,
Hail.
세율이.
Can you ask Mac to do
네,
Milan and
Elon.
Sam?
Sam Colt?
Yeah.
Who's that?
Sam Cope.
I was just kidding. email.
Okay, and then the rest I'll assign people.
Okay, sounds good. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. I'm gonna close the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.